How y'all doing? I'm Paul Ryan, your host of the Across the Cowboys podcast. If you're new to the show, thank you for joining us. And to our regular listeners, welcome back. With me, as always, is my co-host, the most excited co-host in the world, Mike the Pig Crum. Mike, how are you?
I am doing amazing right now, and you guys can see why, the ones watching along with us. This is awesome. Let's get going. CD Piglet, letter C, letter D Piglet. That's where I'm at on X.
Yes, guys. Unfortunately, Brenden couldn't be here tonight as he's on a family vacation, but make sure to follow him on X at Brenden_Smith26. I am Paul Ryan. You can find me on X at Paul_Ryan15. Here we are with episode 2 of our series, Cowboys Crystal Ball. And our first episode, Mike's brother Mitch joined us as we predicted weeks 1 through 4 of the Dallas Cowboys schedule. This week, we'll be breaking down and discussing weeks 5 through 9. With us tonight is a member of the G-Bag Nation and the Dallas Cowboys Radio Network. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Zach Wolchuk to the show. Zach, how are you?
Guys, I'm great. I'm great. It's always a pleasure to talk Cowboys, man, especially with a couple of great people like yourself. So I'm excited, man. The season's right around the corner. Next thing you know, we're going to be out there in Oxnard giving you reports on the team. So we're pumped, man. Football season's the best. The draft's behind us. So I'm ready to get after it and see these guys in some pads.
What is it, 13 Sundays away, Zach? Is that where we're at right now in the
13,
countdown?
Man. Yeah, Scott Hansen let us know, man. We're 13 Sundays away
Yeah.
from Red Zone. So I think we're all counting them down.
Yes, sir. Well, Zach, before we get into it, man, where can we find you on X?
I'm at Zach Wolchuk. That is ZachWolchuk. And you can pretty much find me on all platforms at Zach Wolchuk.
Absolutely. Okay, gentlemen, let's talk some football. And here we are, week 5, and the Cowboys are at the Pittsburgh Steelers. And in 2023, the Steelers' regular season record was 10-7. They lost in the wild card round, and their 2024 strength of schedule is the third most difficult in the NFL. A key stat from the 2023 season: the Steelers have more rushing TDs than pass TDs. Zach, looking at the Steelers team, what were some key offseason additions in your mind?
Well, clearly you look at quarterback, right? I mean, they've got 2 new quarterbacks now. And if you excuse me, I'm just going to pull up their depth chart because I like their offensive line and what they did in the draft as well. But, Fields and, of course, Russell Wilson. Now, I do think Russell Wilson, his best years are behind him. I think he's starting to age. I was a guy that I used to think like Russ, when you started to see the Legion of Boom kind of phase out, when Earl Thomas left, Cam Chancellor left, Richard Sherman. I thought Russ kind of carried that team, made them competitive. It was kind of the reverse in the beginning of his career, where really, it was the run game with Marshawn Lynch and the defense that was the identity of Seattle. But he had them competitive in the postseason and was an MVP candidate. And then I think you saw him in his last year in Seattle. He had the finger injury, a lot of different things started kind of aches and pains. And in Denver, he hasn't been the same guy. And a lot of it's just, he doesn't want to throw the football. He'll be staring down wide open targets. And Russell Wilson just doesn't want to let it rip. But I might be one of the only ones that has not given up on Justin Fields from people that I talk to. I think Fields could be a great fit in Pittsburgh. His ability to extend plays with his legs. George Pickens is a phenomenal athlete, even though, my goodness, you talk to people in Pittsburgh, I think he rubs a lot of people the wrong way. He's an interesting personality, but he's a dynamite talent. So Roman Wilson was a guy, as you know, if you followed the draft show, I was like, he feels like a Steelers receiver to me when I was watching him play. He kind of reminded me of a quicker Hines Ward with the way that he blocks. He's shifty, just gets open. So I like what they've got going on with the receiving core, but the big thing's the offensive line, right? Their offensive line's been so bad, and they went and got Zach Frazier, who I think is really good. A year ago, they took the offensive tackle from Georgia, Broderick Jones, who I think is a guy that could get better. And then Troy Fautanu, who they took out of Washington, I think they did an excellent job of kind of retooling that offensive line. They're in a similar situation as we are with the Cowboys, where they're probably going to start 2 rookies. I think the Cowboys, unless Brock Hoffman beats out Cooper BeeBee, who's my guy, as you guys know, I'm rooting for Cooper, but I do love Brock Hoffman. He very well could earn that role, and that's okay. I think Cooper will start at some point, whether it's guard or center. But I think both these teams are going to start 2 rookies at some point in the season. So I think Pittsburgh's improved quite a bit. And Mike Tomlin doesn't allow that team to lose, right? I mean, they're sitting there. They're 4 games under 500. They'll win the last 5 games of the season, find a way to go 9-8. So I think they very likely could be a playoff team again. It's going to be a tough game to go to Pittsburgh. That's a game I think I'm actually going to go. I think I got a buddy who's a big Steelers fan. We've been friends since high school. We've had a bet going since senior year in high school. He said the Steelers would win a Super Bowl before the Cowboys won one. I said the Cowboys would win another one before the Steelers did. That year, the Steelers made the Super Bowl and lost to the Green Bay Packers, and we got $500 on the line. So ever since then, we've both been sweating it, but neither team's made it. So I think I'm going to go with him and another buddy of mine, and I might have Eric double up, my co-host on the G-Bag Nation, do a post-game for me that week, and I'll go to Pittsburgh and check that game out in person.
What a nice one to go to that stadium. That atmosphere is going to be awesome. Any key losses you see for the Steelers?
I mean, defensively, their linebacking core is interesting to me, but no, I don't think. I think that they gained more than they lost. I think they did a really good job. I thought they had one of the better drafts in the AFC personally. And again, it's really the quarterback position. And I think when you've got two guys that if you could at least just get an upgrade from what Kenny Pickett was giving them, which I think that they will. Yeah, they're a team that can make some noise. I mean, I don't see them as a Super Bowl contender by any means, but they can compete and be a tough out in the AFC North. And then who knows? Maybe they upset somebody depending on the matchup in the wild card round. Probably one and done in that scenario. I don't see them getting past the divisional round. But Pittsburgh, yeah, I think they're going to be a tough out this year. They could be a 10-win team.
Matt Canada was a big issue in Pittsburgh for a few seasons, and he can be viewed as an addition by subtraction type of move. But is Arthur Smith any better in your eyes?
Arthur Smith, he was a horrible head coach there in Atlanta. Oh, my God. Bijan Robinson, to not utilize him, and you took him in the top 10, I was just stunned by. Kyle Pitts and Drake London, they've all got to be having a party that he's gone there. But he was a solid offensive coordinator with the Titans. So it could be like a Josh McDaniels scenario where anytime Josh McDaniels has been an offensive coordinator with Bill Belichick, he's done a good job. He's just a bleep hole and a terrible head coach. Arthur Smith could be the same way. So I think he's an upgrade, but you don't know what you're going to get. I mean, they ran the football a ton with him in Tennessee, which is why I was so shocked at the misuse of Bijan last year. I thought that, okay, this could be really, really good with Bijan going to play with Arthur Smith. But I think he will be an upgrade. It's going to be interesting, though, to see how their offense works. And to me, that's why having Justin Fields, I think he will end up taking over as the starter because of his running ability. Now, all of a sudden, you've got Fields, you've got Jalen Warren, you've got, of course, Najee Harris, who knows if he gets traded or what the deal is, but I think he's going to start the season with them. You could have a formidable rushing attack, especially if you hit on these draft picks along the offensive line, which I do think they're going to. I like Troy Fontenot and Zach Frazier quite a bit.
Looking at the team, it seems pretty obvious from what you've been saying that the passing offense is the biggest concern in Pittsburgh. Do you think you would lean more towards – I'm kind of flipping this up because the way you've answered, I kind of know the answer to the next question. So do you think you would lean towards going Justin Fields and leaning more on his running game instead of letting Russell Wilson and trying to get him to improve the passing attack?
Yeah, and it's really because at this stage in Russ's career, I don't see him really being that effective. I mean, like I said, you've got a couple of decent weapons there, but he had some good weapons in Denver. Like Cortland Sutton's a good receiver. Jerry Jeudy's a good player. Marvin Mims Jr. from our own backyard in Frisco, Texas, stud. I mean, he's probably going to have a great career there in Denver. We'll see what happens with their quarterback situation. That might be the most mid quarterback room in the history of the NFL. My gosh, I don't know what's going on there with Blow Dix and company. But, it's one of those things where I do think Fields ultimately is the better option because I just don't think Russ has it with his arm anymore. The deep ball with him used to be so beautiful when he was hitting it with Tyler Lockett and DK when he was in his first couple of years. I mean, the way he could just drop that thing like a rainbow, he just doesn't have that anymore consistently. So I would lean Fields, yes.
Yeah, so, you kind of answered this question already, but it sounds like you think maybe Justin Fields will not only start over Wilson, but probably should start over Wilson. Do you like his fit in the Arthur Smith offense? And what do you think it is about Justin Fields where he's had such a lack of success so far in his career?
Injuries. I also think a very inconsistent offensive line there in Chicago. And, some of that is on Justin a little bit. Like Justin's been very, very erratic and a similar thing to Russell Wilson in terms of as a passer. You never quite know what you're going to get. But from what I saw of him at Georgia, and then you saw flashes of it, I think there was a Thursday night game where he hit DJ Moore for 3 touchdowns at the beginning of the season. You've seen the ability to be able to be a good passer in the league. But I think what just trumps him over Fields is what he can do to open up things with his legs. I think it's similar to what Arthur Smith had with Marcus Mariota in Tennessee when he was there, and then with Ryan Tannehill. Tannehill obviously being a converted wide receiver who can also run as well. I think Tannehill probably at this stage in their careers, more polished passer than what Justin Fields was at that time under Arthur Smith. But I think he provides more of those similar traits that we've seen an Arthur Smith-led offense be successful than what Russell Wilson can provide at this stage in his career.
Now, I think most of us agree, because I think it should be Fields also. But let's say Tomlin just goes, you know what? Wilson's my guy. I'm rolling with Wilson this year. What would you expect a Wilson-type season to be on this Steelers team?
Yeah, I still think ultimately the difference between the two quarterbacks could be a win or two. I think the majority of it, they're going to rely on the run game, and then maybe they're able to hit a couple of big passes down the field occasionally with George Pickens and his playmaking ability. I do think Roman Wilson can feast. I mean, he's a guy, especially with Russ, if he wants to kind of be a check down Charlie type, Roman Wilson can feast underneath. I mean, he's very, very capable of doing that. So I still think, if it's, I think the stats last year, they showed solid for Russell Wilson. It wasn't like he was terrible. I mean, I think, around 20 touchdowns, 8 interceptions, maybe like a 3,200-yard season passing, something along those lines for Russell Wilson, and they could still be a 9-win football team. Maybe if you start Justin Fields, you're a 10-win football team. Like the difference isn't huge, but I like the upside potential of a Justin Fields-led offense versus you might be limited a little bit with Russell Wilson.
Yeah. So does Mike Tomlin get the credit he deserves for the success that he's had as a head coach?
No. I said it this past week on G-Bag. I think he's the most underrated head coach in football. Now, in fairness, I'm doing halftime and postgame for the Cowboys. I'm not able to watch everything single snap of the Steelers. And so Steeler fans will push back and be like, he's got, game management issue, which head coach in football doesn't. That's a big issue with Kyle Shanahan. That's why he hasn't been able to win a Super Bowl in some of these big games. I mean, we remember the first time they played San Francisco in the wild card round, Kyle Shanahan was like, oh my gosh, go ahead, take this game. Take this game from us. We're going to let the Cowboys hang in this football game. And then unfortunately it didn't work out. You had the quarterback sneak fiasco that happened with Dak Prescott. You're not able to get the ball clocked. And, the Cowboys pooped on themselves a little bit in that scenario. But there was mismanagement. And I think people would argue that Kyle Shanahan's one of the smarter, better coaches in football. And it's hard to argue that now with the success that he's had. But Mike Tomlin has done more with less throughout his entire career than I think a lot of head coaches have. When you're winning games with a guy like Duck Hodges at quarterback, and you've got your third or sometimes fourth string guy, and you're still going out there and competing and sometimes getting victories, yeah, I think Mike Tomlin's phenomenal. And I get the argument that some pushback that I got, he's almost like they're drafting in the middle of the first round. They get Kenny Pickett. They're not able to get in the top 10 to maybe get their next Big Ben Roethlisberger. But at least they took a flyer on the first-round guy in Kenny Pickett, and they recognized that it didn't work. And now they're trying it with two guys, Russell Wilson and a former top 10 pick in Justin Fields. Maybe it can. But defensively, he's always going to be good. He's a leader of men. People follow him. I love Mike Tomlin. I think he's phenomenal. If for some reason things didn't work out, he just got that 3-year extension today. But if Mike McCarthy didn't make it past this year, and let's say Mike Tomlin became available, I'd be very interested in getting Mike Tomlin here with the Cowboys.
Rather have Justin Fields for a 6th or Trey Lance for a 4th?
I'd probably rather have, and I love Trey Lance. I do. He's a really, really good dude. I got to hang out with him once, but just because of the draft capital, and you guys know me, I want the 4th-round pick. I'd probably go Fields for the 6th.
It was a mean question.
Yeah, it's okay. Okay. I'm still holding out help. I'm excited to watch what Trey can do this preseason.
With the rosters how they are, how do you like this matchup for Dallas against the Steelers?
I think it's a pick-em. I think it's really, really tough. I don't know what we're going to get from this year's version of the Dallas Cowboys. There could be some serious growing pains because of the offensive line. You're installing a lot of new pieces there. A wide receiver who's going to step up and be your third guy. I think it's obvious that Jake Ferguson and CeeDee Lamb being 1, Jake Ferguson being 2 are your top options in the passing game, but it took them half a season to get Brandon Cooks going. And then after that, is it Jalen Brooks? Is it Jalen Tolbert? Is it Ryan Flournoy? Is it somebody that we're not even considering steps up for you? So similar questions to the receiver depth that I think Pittsburgh has. Going on the road to Pittsburgh is tough. I would like to say the Cowboys win that football game, but that's going to be a dogfight. And the matchup, because what the Steelers can do defensively and get after it with TJ Watts and Hightower, that's going to be a challenging pass rush to have to go against. So it does make me nervous. I don't think it's a surefire win. I'd lean Cowboys because of Dak Prescott in that game. And I don't know that you qualify Pittsburgh as a quote-unquote good team like we were looking at with Buffalo and Miami and when the Cowboys, San Francisco, last year when the Cowboys, that was the knock, right? They can't beat the good teams. I think they're more in line with the Seattle, who you saw the Cowboys beat at home. So winnable game. I think they can win it. I don't know if they will for sure, but I'd pick Dallas.
Brings us to the next question. Who wins this game, Zach?
I got to take the Cowboys. I can't take the Steelers. Are you kidding me? Pittsburgh.
Mike?
I like the extra days. It's one of those, we talked about it when we talked about the schedule, like gifts in the schedule. If we played Pittsburgh 1 week earlier and we were coming off a Baltimore game and then had a short week and had to play Pittsburgh, that's a schedule loss. That's one thing I talk about a lot. You know, they're human beings. You get beat up in a game, then short week travel, and you play Pittsburgh, you're dead. I think playing the Giants before that they know really well and then getting extra time is going to be that little bit that puts them over the top. So I think
that's a great point.
Yeah, playing through the first 5 games on the road is never easy. I think that the Dallas offense will be too much for the Steelers to handle. So I have the Cowboys on this one as well. So let's move on here to moving on to Week 6 versus Detroit Lions. In the 2023, the Lions' regular season record is 12-5. They won the division. The playoff record 2-1. They lost in the conference championship game, and the 2024 strength of schedule is the 11th hardest. Key stat for 2023: the Detroit Lions attempted the least amount of field goals in the entire NFL with 21. Zach, looking at this Lions team, what are some key offseason additions they had?
I thought they did a fantastic job. I think they had arguably the best offseason in the NFC. I mean, with what they were able to do. I mean, defensively, in the draft, you lose Cam Sutton, and then you have Terrion Arnold, who I thought was the best corner in the class, fall into your lap. So I love that addition. To me, this is going to be a tough game. I think Detroit wins this game. They remember what happened last year and the way in which they lost. And Man Campbell's going to have this bunch ready to go. Jared Goff, they're going to use Jahmyr Gibbs in a variety of different ways. Assuming Frank Ragnall's there, that offensive line's really, really good. They can run the football on you. Jared Goff was very off in that game against the Cowboys on Saturday night, missed some throws. I don't know that you can bank on him and Amon-Ra St. Brown and not really having that. And Sam Laporta's going to be better in year 2.
Yeah.
Detroit's for real. And I think that the revenge aspect here, they're going to have a little bit more fuel to the fire. The Lions, I think, are a better team than the Cowboys right now.
Oh.
Yeah. Man, I hate that. Is there any key losses that might give Dallas some hope? Did they have any losses from the team?
I mean, the big one was Cam Sutton, who they had to cut, and that was their prized free agent offseason addition a year ago. So, I mean, other than that, their defensive tackle, Lee McNeil's back. They added DJ Reader, which I think is great. Marcus Davenport as an edge. They really did not lose much, guys. They unfortunately, I can't sell you on a loss. And they're selling Jamison Williams, who they took in the first round out of Alabama a couple years ago. He's supposedly having a great offseason. This might be the breakout year finally in year 3 for Jamison Williams. So I think they've just got better. I don't really see them having lost a lot to be like, man, Detroit's going to have a little comeback down to earth season.
They did lose C.J. Gardner-Johnson, right? Do you consider that a major loss or a big loss? Or
And of course, the reason I don't say that he is he was hurt much of the year for them, right? So it's like we didn't see the type of impact he would have had. He's a very good player, very good safety. Right. But Brian Branch, now that you add Arnold, Branch can really play slot corner safety, can play wherever you want him to in that secondary. I think he is an awesome chess piece. So for me, I'm taking the Lions in this one, boys. I can't homer it up 2 picks in a row. I really do think the Lions they're a legit Super Bowl contender in the NFC.
I agree.
Yeah, so Brad Holmes has had a lot of success in his time in the NFL, but he's a risk taker when it comes to draft picks. What are your thoughts on his style as a GM?
Yeah, if he wants a guy, he's going to get him, right? I mean, Brad Holmes is like, man, I see it. I want it. I'm going to go get it. I'll overpay if I have to. And he did. Fortunately for the Cowboys, right? They move up. They go get Terry and Arnold. They slide back by the draft chart. Cowboys got that extra 3. Maybe it should have been a 4, but we'll take it because you end up landing Cooper BeeBee out of Kansas State, baby. Let's go. That's my boy. So it was a big win for the Cowboys. But, yeah, Brad Holmes, and I like that strategy. To me, if you see a guy, you love him, you want him, go get him. Be aggressive. And they had the type of offseason, and they're in a win-now type of mode where they're paying their guys this offseason, whether it's Goff, St. Brown. They're kind of in a small window here that they really have an opportunity to kind of succeed and go over that hump to me. And so I like it. I mean, they assessed guys they wanted. They were aggressive. I like that style right there in the draft from Brad Holmes.
Hey, Paul, can you take the Jameson Williams question? Go ahead.
Yeah, sure. You talked about Jameson Williams in the offseason that he's been having, according to Dan Campbell. But if Williams can reach his potential, could the Lions have the best offense in the NFL?
Yeah, they could. They absolutely could. And I think another big part of that is Sam Laporta. I think Laporta's fantastic. And guys, Mike McCarthy loved Sam Laporta. I mean, there was a big, all of a sudden, push day of the draft. Like, oh, are the Cowboys about to take Sam Laporta at the bottom of the first round? I think Dalton Kincaid was their top tight end of that class. And I think that if Kincaid had have made it and Buffalo didn't leapfrog the Cowboys, maybe Kincaid is on the team and you don't have Mozzie Smith. He wasn't. So they decided to take Mozzie, and it was really between him and Bergeron, of course, who we now know went to Atlanta, who I thought would have been a good guard. I projected him inside and not as a tackle. But, yeah, when you look at the weapons, especially if Jameson Williams hits, 100%. St. Brown's a stud. Maybe he's got some soft tissue stuff. He'll miss a game for a hamstring or a groin, whatever it might be. But the dude's a bona fide top 10 receiver in football. I love the two-headed monster they have at running back. I think Jahmyr Gibbs is going to take another step this year. They're talking about using him more in the receiving game. That's going to be an asset. And Jared Goff, guys, I think that Jared Goff gets a little too much criticism for me. Like, I don't think Goff is on that elite tier by any means. I'm not putting him up there with Patrick Mahomes, okay? But I do think that if we're being honest with ourselves and having a real conversation, Jared Goff and Dak Prescott are on the same level.
I don't think that's a crazy take.
So that kind of leads into the next question, but now I got to flip it a little bit. Do you think that a lot of the reason they're on the same level is more about Goff and Dak's play being similar, or do you think Goff has had better play callers, maybe better surrounding cast, and that's put him up at Dak's level? And maybe if Dak had a McVay or a Johnson?
Yeah, Ben Johnson.
Ben Johnson. Dak's never had a play caller.
He might elevate above Goff.
Yeah, Dak's never had a play caller that's as good as Sean McVay or Ben Johnson. So that's 100% fair, right? I would love to see Dak with a Sean McVay, with a Kevin O'Connell, with a Kyle Shanahan, with a Ben Johnson, one of these upper-level offensive gurus. I think at times last year, why? Because Mike McCarthy let Dak Prescott be the offensive coordinator. That's my belief. Everyone wondered, oh, my gosh, what happened during the bye, the cross-the-hall meetings? Was it Dan? No. I think Dak Prescott said, F off, let me be me, and Dak was the one who was calling things on the field. And Mike said, you know what, man? Have at it. Dak took the reins, and he was that dude. So I think Jared Goff has just been more consistent. And, again, it's tough because it's a team sport. But he's been more consistent in the postseason over the course of his career than Dak has. I mean, people act like Dak's never won a playoff game. He has, right? He played well enough to beat the Packers his rookie year. He beat Russell Wilson in Seattle when Russell Wilson was still really, really good. And then, yes, he beat a Tom Brady who was in the final game of his career in a shell of himself. But Dak played a perfect game. You can't knock Dak Prescott for beating the crap out of Tampa Bay. And because they were a playoff team, right? They did that. So I get it. The last 3 playoff exits, Dak has played like crap, right? Green Bay and the 2 against San Francisco. And what hurts is the 2 against San Francisco. If you just get like a B-level game from Dak, the Cowboys win that game because the defense kept them in it so much. You really needed one drive in the second San Francisco game, and they weren't able to do it. So that's the letdown, when it comes to that. Jared Goff has been to an NFC Championship game and a Super Bowl. So to me, in the postseason, he has proven to be a winning type of quarterback. There are times where if you put everything on him, he will come up with a poor throw or an interception. As I mentioned, big reason the Cowboys beat them was he was inaccurate. He did not play well against the Cowboys at AT&T Stadium. But we also see games like that from Dak where he just seems off and he's not quite himself and in rhythm. So I really do think they're all pretty much on that same tier for me when it comes to they're both top 10 quarterbacks. And I think in the big stage in the postseason more recently, we've seen Goff perform, whereas Dak, we know it's in there. We know he can do it. We just haven't seen it yet for a variety of reasons.
Yeah, there's a stat out there. I know when Goff is on, what is it called? On-time plays or he's one of the best in football. He's better than Dak. When it's off-timing plays, when it's scramble around, make something happen, Dak's one of the best in football.
No doubt. You get out of the pocket. Yeah, Dak is one of the best when it comes to making plays outside of the pocket off script. Of course, Mahomes, Josh Allen, they excel at that. Goff, when you get pressure, and you could see it when Frank Ragnow was out of the lineup, not the same quarterback. Dak handles pressure much better than Jared Goff does.
Yeah.
So, kind of sticking here with the Lions, but prior to the 2021 season, the Detroit Lions were a bit of a lost franchise, but they found a way to right the ship and were a half away from reaching the Super Bowl. What has Detroit done that Dallas hasn't, Zach?
I think that they've got the right offensive coordinator, which is huge to the entire conversation we've been having. Right? I mean, Dak's had to deal with freaking Jason Garrett, who, you saw, he gets his first chance out of Dallas with the Giants, and they average 14 points per game. Yeah. Jason Garrett was never this offensive guru mastermind that people wanted him to be so badly. Really, the Jones family did. You get a Ben Johnson, and then you get a Dan Campbell, who is an alpha. He's a leader of men, much like Mike Tomlin, right? Like, people want to play for you. It's difficult to come into an organization that has been so bad, like Detroit has, and break that cycle of losing. And Dan Campbell has done that. And to me, that takes a special type of coach. And Brad Holmes has done an excellent job. I talked about their roster. They don't have a lot of roster holes. We got a ton of questions about the Cowboys, right? Like, you feel great about certain positions. We feel good about guard with Martin and Tyler Smith. Does Trayvon Diggs come back from that injury? The Cowboys have banked on guys coming back from injury a lot. Michael Gallup being most recent. They haven't been the same player. I'm hopeful Diggs is. And if he is, then you got Diggs and Bland. That could be one of the best cornerback duos in football, right? What do you have behind CeeDee Lamb? There's a big question there. And I love Brandon Cooks. But do you trust them to use Brandon Cooks? I don't have a question that Ben Johnson isn't going to use Jamison Williams. That's why we think and we're buying into he could have a breakout year. Jahmyr Gibbs could take another step because they might find ways to creatively use him. Did the Cowboys find ways to creatively use players like Tony Pollard throughout his career? No. It took finally one breakout year for Tony Pollard, and then last year offensive line was bad, and Pollard was also coming off an injury. And it took him until after Thanksgiving to be right. So to me, there's a lot of areas where I think the GM has been great there. Look, Will McClay and the scouting department keep the Cowboys competitive. Every other thing they do in that organization, it is fair to question.
Absolutely.
Fair to say it's poor. They are poor at re-signing. They're poor in bringing in top-tier free agents. They're okay. They'll hit every once in a while at some middling ones, but you could easily say they're poor at everything but drafting, honestly.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Is this a statement game for both teams?
Yeah, it's one of those, hey, let's see kind of where we're at. Because I think both these teams coming into the season expect to be in the playoffs. The Cowboys expect to be a contender to win the NFC. Detroit damn sure does. They've got all their chips put in here. They are all in. Detroit's acted like they're all in this offseason. So, yeah, I think it is. But here's the thing. I think it means more to the Lions than it does to the Cowboys, which is why I'll take the Lions in this game.
Absolutely. Mike, who do you got in this game?
Okay, so here's my thing about motivation, why head coaches are so important. If Dan Campbell is Dallas's head coach, here's what happens. And you know what they did after we beat them last year? They said, we want them. They're our game. We want to play them in the play. So they want us. After we beat them, they want us. They talk smack. They own us like they won. But we ain't got that guy. They got that guy. So I have a feeling they're going to be a little bit more ready to go. And their offensive line versus our D tackles has got to be a worry. They're going to get to our linebackers. So I got to take Detroit in this one. And I hate picking us to lose at home, but.
Yeah, and the Cowboys have been, last year it was so much fun. I did not do a single post-game show with Brian at AT&T Stadium with a loss until the Packers game. And I'm not going to lie, because, you guys know, I love the Cowboys are my first love. I'm a fan that has wanted to do this as my job, and I've been able to make that happen. But at the end of the day, I love the Cowboys, and it's hard to be able to separate the fan in me from being an unbiased broadcaster. That game and the San Francisco loss, those were tough ones, man. I had to be like, can I come back and do this again? And I'm doing it, but that was heartbreaking. It was really like, the path was there for us last year. You got the 2 home games, hopefully, and then we'd see what happens, at San Francisco in the conference championship game. But at least they be in one. How many Cowboy fans are living right now that haven't even seen them play on Championship Sunday? Hell, I was alive. I don't remember it, right? So that would have just been such a great moment to see. And I don't know. Can they replicate that home dominance? That's going to be a fantastic question this year.
Yeah, so kind of sticking with the trend here, coming off a bye week, I think the Lions view this as a revenge game. Dallas loses at home. Let's move on to week 7. Here we are with the bye week. And Zach, when you look at the games played on the physicality of some of the teams Dallas has faced, did the NFL do Dallas a favor with the early bye week?
They might have, especially to your point about all the road games early, right? That's a tough one. And getting Baltimore, getting Pittsburgh, those are going to be tough. Week 1, Cleveland, right? Cleveland, good guy. Cleveland's a bad matchup for the Cowboys. That's going to be a tough one to come out of the gates and go 1-0 because they run the football really well, they stop the run really well, and they can pressure you with Myles Garrett, who might be the best defensive player in all the game. So you've got 3 games there and Detroit that we just talked about that are going to be physical, smash mouth style football. So I do think ultimately the bye is falling at a good time. Ideally, would I like it week 9? Let's get it really right in the middle of the season. Sure. But you do get the benefit of the doubt always for that extra 10-day rest, that mini bye that's built in. This year it'll be actually after Thanksgiving since they don't play the Thursday to Thursday like they have most years. But, yeah, I think that this bye, just the way the schedule fell, it probably isn't a good place to be able to catch your breath and reset a little bit.
Yeah.
Do you think Dallas could have a losing record going into the bye? Yeah,
I do. I really, really do. And I don't think you're beating Baltimore. I don't know if you're beating Cleveland. As I mentioned, Pittsburgh ain't going to be, a guaranteed dub. And I picked them to lose to Detroit. So it's very likely that you could have maybe 4 L's going into that thing.
Yeah.
Would you, when the Cowboys are on their bye week, is Sunday still dominated by football, or do you spend your time doing other things while you can? I know you're recently a father and a married man and everything.
Yeah, no, that'll be different. Being a dad and my beautiful 3-month-old daughter we're trying to get her to sleep as we speak right now. She's kind of developed into like a witching hour right now. This is she's screaming her head off. So, wifey's doing an excellent job keeping her calm. But yeah, it is. It's typically been red zone. I'm going to chill with the boys, and I'm going to soak in all the football that I can because I'm not able to do it when the Cowboys are playing. So we'll see if I can let that fly. But that's the plan. That's the plan, is to be able to just sit down. And it'll be fun because it might be the first Sunday that I can actually watch it with baby girl. And so she can soak in, and we can have some father-daughter bonding time and just watch Scott Hansen in the red zone all day.
Are you going to raise her to be a Cowboys fan? Sorry, Mike.
I can't help but raise her to be a Cowboy fan. I've often thought about it, like, am I going to do this to you? The torture that my grandparents have put me through. But yeah, hell yes, dude. Are you kidding me? There's so much I could show you in my room that I've been blessed with, that my grandparents have passed down. I've got helmets and footballs and our old Texas Stadium seats in here, and my Emmitt Smith shrine on the wall over here. She's gonna know nothing but the star, baby.
Yes, sir.
That's great. I know it's very possible that you can't give us a record prediction because you got to save that for your shows. If you can't give a straight record prediction at this point, how about would you go above or below 500 in your prediction at this point? How about that?
I'd go above, and why? It's because I still believe that Dak Prescott is a good quarterback. I know that it's so divisive, right, with Cowboy fans, but to say Dak isn't good, especially in the regular season, come on. I mean, you're wrong. Yeah, runner up to MVP. Dak has played some really good football. He's still a winning quarterback, right? When he's been healthy throughout a season, they haven't had a losing record. So I'm thinking maybe 10-7 is kind of best case scenario for them.
All right, well, here we are, Week 8. You mentioned the witching hour. Week 8 at San Francisco 49ers, Zach. 2023 regular season record, 12-5. Playoff record, they lose in the Super Bowl. Strength of schedule in 2024 is tied for the 12th most difficult. And the key stat from 2023, Christian McCaffrey had more rushing TDs than 15 other teams in the NFL.
Wow. Looking
at this 49ers team, Zach, what are some key offseason additions that they had for you?
Well, really, it was Ricky Pearsall at the bottom of the first round, and now I don't know what's going to happen at wide receiver. The losses, do they end up having, Debo on the team, or is it Brandon Ayuk? Is one of them a casualty? And I think that Debo is the one they want to move. I know that Brandon Ayuk has been the sexy name. I think they're looking at Debo and the way in which he plays. He's the guy that I think they're a little bit worried about. And I think that there might be a little bit of friction there at times in the locker room. I think they'd like to get him moved somewhere if they could. And I think Pittsburgh actually had an offer in place for Debo, but it wasn't enough. So that adds another wrinkle to this, right? Because you would have been playing Debo either way if he ended up going to Pittsburgh. But they didn't really do anything to me that was jaw-dropping this offseason. They've essentially just stayed status quo, right? They've been able to kind of keep the band together. Eric Armstead's gone, their defensive tackle. That's a big loss, right? So, I mean, it's going to be – that's a tough loss along the defensive line, and they've been so good along the defensive line. And then Dre Greenlaw being hurt, right? And so now that's the area that's giving the Cowboys the most issues, really Dak. Fred Warner's been Dak's kryptonite. But a lot of it's also the case of, all right, you got two linebackers. You're the best linebacking duo in football with Greenlaw and in Warner. You're not going to have Greenlaw, in my opinion, for that game. I don't think he's going to be ready to go yet. So that's a big loss. How are they up front? How do they weather the storm at defensive tackle on the interior of the defensive line? Maybe you can run the football on them a little bit. Maybe if the Cowboys hit on their rookies and Zeke, we'll see this running back by committee with Rico Dowdle and company. I don't know. I really wish they would have taken Jalen Wright, but unfortunately that wasn't an option for them. But yeah, I think that San Francisco is going to regress a little bit. Not a lot, but a little bit. And can they sustain the health that they were blessed with a year ago, right? Christian McCaffrey really stayed healthy all year for them, but we know he's got an injury history. And we've seen this kind of happen with San Francisco, where as great as Kyle Shanahan is as an offensive mind, when they start losing pieces like they did with Debo last year, they lose 2 games in a row. If they don't have their full starters available, you will start to see chink in that San Francisco armor. So who's available for that game against Dallas? How good are their defensive tackles? Do they keep all of these receivers, or do they end up moving one? There's some question marks going into the season. And then Brock Purdy, I do think Brock Purdy is a good quarterback. I think he's benefited by the offense, but he runs that thing beautifully. We've seen not just any quarterback can run that Kyle Shanahan offense. Brock Purdy is built for that.
So when you're looking at the schedule, until we show different, do you just look at it and go, that's an L when you're predicting?
It is now, because I took the Cowboys last year in that game in San Francisco. I was like, come on, it's their time. They're going to be so angry. They're going to have a lot of fuel. This is the build up that week. They'll have a game plan ready to go. And then they get completely curb stomped. So I can't pick Dallas to beat San Francisco until the Cowboys show to me that they can.
You know, Zach, I know it's only week 8, but is this the most important game of the regular season?
Psychologically, maybe. I think that San Francisco's kind of been, and they didn't have to play them last year, right? But I do think there is something to you get over that hump of San Francisco because they are still the class of the NFC until proven otherwise. So psychologically, if you are able to beat them, I think that goes a long way to the second half of the season with the confidence and then kind of the momentum you can build after that. So you can make a case that it is the most important game.
And is there anything you've seen Dallas do that makes you like, okay, this is something that could get us over that Niner hump this offseason? I know they haven't done much, but is there anything?
Yeah, I think it's really just, look, if you can hit on the offensive line, retooling that, like if Guyton turns out to be really good, like we saw Tyler Smith play his rookie year, and there were moments where Tyler still struggled at left tackle, but for the most part, I would take Guyton, right? That performance that Tyler Smith gave you, playing like a Pro Bowl-esque caliber left tackle. And then the guards, are going to be pretty good. Terrence Steele, can he get back to that run-blocking duo with Zach Martin that was so good? A year now further removed from the injury, can you get back to Terrence Steele being that type of player? And then at center, look, if you're playing Cooper BeeBee, it'll be an upgrade over Tyler Biadasz. So the offensive line has a chance to make this thing more interesting for the Cowboys. Because if you can run the football, which they hadn't really been able to do against San Francisco, that will ease some of the burden on Dak.
What do you think it is about the 49ers that gives Dallas Cowboys so much trouble, Zach?
I think that it is the linebackers. I really, really do. I think that them being able to cut off the middle of the field and everything underneath, I think that it causes Dak to hesitate at times. I think he's a little bit gun shy when he sees 54 flash, in front of him. And then, they've also got the closing speed where they'll decide last minute, maybe I'm playing a zone here and then I'm going to take off and I'm going to attack Dak. And I think that the linebackers dropping into coverage and really just dominating the middle of the field, that's been the biggest reason for the struggles. Other than that, 2 years ago, they didn't have enough offensive weapons. When T.Y. Hilton is your number 2 receiver going into that playoff game, which he was, the Cowboys didn't really have a fair chance. Then you lose Tony Pollard. So all you had was CeeDee Lamb. So it's just it's too much to ask Dak to go out, Dak and CD to just play hero ball with each other. Now you've got Jake Ferguson that's developed into one of the better tight ends in football. Maybe he's able to change some things up, especially, as I mentioned, without Dre Greenlaw. But to me, you've seen defensively they can hold their own against San Francisco in every meeting but the regular season one last year. It's just on offense, they haven't been able to get anything going consistently against that defense. And I think the big reason is Warner and Greenlaw.
I think you've answered pretty adequately about Brock Purdy. So I'm going to ask, what would a win over San Francisco do for Dallas going forward?
Yeah, I think that could be a statement type of win where people all of a sudden are like, okay, now maybe the Cowboys are a serious contender in the NFC. Right now, I think because of all the losses that they've had and outside of the draft and Eric Kendricks, the quiet offseason, they're kind of being written off, right? Which is good. I'd prefer that right now. It's been tough. I think they were heavy favorites against Green Bay. You get smacked in the mouth. So to me, I think that would be like all right, now the rest of the NFL is taking the Cowboys seriously in the NFC, where I think a lot of them are looking at Philadelphia as reclaiming the NFC East right now, and the Cowboys are kind of an afterthought. Like maybe they can be a wild card team.
Who scares you more in this matchup? Is it Kyle Shanahan versus Mike Zimmer, or the San Francisco defense versus the Dallas offense?
It's the San Francisco defense against the Cowboys offense. Mike Zimmer, I remember when he was hired, I think it was The Athletic, maybe it was Saad Yousuf, wrote a pretty good piece on Mike Zimmer and the success that he's had against Kyle Shanahan offenses. He's been a guy that's had some success against him, as is the Cleveland Browns. Oh my gosh, Jim Schwartz. Jim Schwartz is a guy that's had some success against him. And a lot of that is like the robber coverage. Mike Zimmer likes to do the A and B gap blitzes, and then he'll pull out of that. Like, he shows a lot of pressure looks, which might be a little bit confusing. The difference is, and Dan Quinn's defenses did a pretty good job against Kyle Shanahan. But the difference is, Zim's I'm going to dictate to you what I want to do. I'm not going to sit back and let you, with your motion and your fancy hoo-ha stuff that you're doing, go ahead and now I'm playing to where you're moving. No. We're going to line up here, and I'm going to put Micah Parsons over your center. And then you're going to dictate to me, are you blocking Micah? That's okay. Now I know exactly where I can send Tank, or I can stunt Nealand, or what I want to do with Osa Odighizuwa. I can try and get everybody else now lined up on a plus matchup. So I like the way Zim does this. Zim is going to bring the fight to you versus I'm going to sit back here, right? So I think the Cowboys defense is going to be okay under Zim. It is the offense. The offense has not proven in 3 games against San Francisco now that they can put up more than, 24 points? So that's the big question mark. Can they find success against that defense? Then, again, the Dre Greenlaw loss, that's going to be the thing that I'll be talking about. We'll see. Maybe that's the difference maker. Now, Fred Warner's still there. The boogeyman's still there. But that's the chess matchup. Can Dallas finally offensively show something against San Francisco's defense?
Hit a deep shot on them. God, their cornerbacks aren't that great.
I know. We've talked about that, man. And it seems like they just have not wanted to push the football. Kevontae Turpin had the touchdown, and that was a pretty play. But definitely in the divisional round game 2 years ago, I think they took one deep shot to CeeDee Lamb. It was a prayer, and he caught it. So, yeah, go ahead and try and put some pressure on those guys down the field.
Any chance you got Dallas winning this?
I can't. I can't do it until the Cowboys do. I mean, I'd be lying to myself. And of course, I hope. Yeah, hell yeah, I hope the Cowboys do. I can't stand San Francisco. But no, I mean, as of where we stand today, if everybody's healthy, both sides, San Francisco, I think, is better.
Same.
Mike?
Same. I'm not picking us over the Niners. No.
Well, I guess I'll be the homer because after an interesting stretch of games versus the Rams, Patriots, Cardinals, and the Seahawks with their bye week in sight, I think the Cowboys defense does just enough to get the monkey off their back and finally beat the Niners.
If you pick this one, you're going to get major props on that.
Absolutely.
Yes, sir. All right, here we are, Week 9 at the Atlanta Falcons, and in 2023, the Falcons were 7-10. Of course, they missed the playoffs, but in 2024, their strength of schedule is the easiest schedule in the NFL. And key stat from 2023, even though he was the 8th overall pick, Bijan Robinson was last in the NFL in red zone touches, and even Tyler Algier had more than Bijan in 2023. Zach, what are some key offseason additions for the Falcons, sir?
Yeah, I mean, to me, it's really just you got rid of, that head coach there, Arthur Smith. I think that was a big-time move for them. But, look, and then Kirk Cousins, of course. Now you've got a quarterback that you feel good about. I think their draft was pretty solid. I like Braylon Trice, who they got later on in the draft. And they made some moves like Jace McClellan they took late. That was the guy we were wondering would the Cowboys end up looking at him. Jaquay Jackson could be a good player. But I think a lot of what they're looking at is kind of organic growth. Like they brought in Darnell Mooney. Is that moving the needle for me on offense? No. But they should be better because Kirk Cousins, assuming he comes back from that injury, is a huge upgrade over what they were dealing with Desmond Ridder. And they were one of those teams that was like a top 10 defense a year ago. So they're going to show up, play some pretty good defense. They can run the football. If the Cowboys still are showing an inability to stop the run, Bijan might go for 200 against you, man. Like, Bijan is a dog. Bijan is the real deal. And I do think Kyle Pitts is an interesting matchup problem. Maybe they're using him now with the new offensive scheme in ways that Arthur Smith was not. This is a game the Cowboys should win. Like, I'm still going to say the Cowboys are better than the Atlanta Falcons. But Atlanta's an interesting team because you don't really know what you're going to get from them. They were a team that should have been a playoff team if they had Kirk Cousins on their team a year ago. So you'd assume that they'll also be competing for one of these wild card spots. This could be a very important game if the Cowboys find themselves in tiebreaker scenarios. This is one where I think the Cowboys are going to have to make sure they get.
Yeah.
Agreed. I'm going to go right on to drafting the quarterback. So, like you said, top defense already. They had a top defense. They gave $100 million to Kirk Cousins.
Yeah.
But considering his age and injury, could this be something where they're looked at as this was a good pick in a couple of years? Or do you think it's like they should have went for what was best for them now?
This is something that I know my co-host Eric Giafalo hated. I liked it. I think it was a shock. It was. I did not think that they would take Michael Penix Jr., but it's so hard to scout and predict quarterbacks. But the one guy that I was like, man, Michael Penix Jr. has a little it. He's got a little it factor about him. I mean, Indiana was a terrible program once he left. He had them competitive. He gets Washington to the national championship game. I mean, that game against Texas in the playoff was very reminiscent to what we saw C.J. Stroud do against, granted, a better defense in Georgia. But Texas's defense was solid, too. I mean, they've got some corners and some safeties that I think are going to be drafted here in the next year or two. Texas wasn't exactly like a terrible defense. Michael Penix Jr. picked them apart. The ball location, the sticky coverage, and he's throwing guys open. And, hey, he had 3 receivers that all got selected, and I thought they were all awesome. Like Rome Odunze, he could end up being the best receiver out of this class, and it wouldn't surprise me. I love Jalen McMillan. He's going to end up being the heir apparent to Mike Evans there in Tampa Bay. And Jalen Polk, local kid from Lufkin, same high school that Des Bryant went to, also going to be interesting. Now, he's probably going to have the worst career out of the 3 because he got stuck in New England. Yeah. And I don't know if Drake May is going to hit or not. That's going to be a very difficult situation there for anybody to succeed. There's so much I don't know what's going on with the Patriots right now. But I liked it. I think if you see a guy and you think he can be a franchise quarterback, you never know when you're going to be in that position again. And they pulled the trigger at 8. It goes back to what I started talking about with Brad Holmes, being aggressive. Quarterback's the most important position in the league. And they know that better than a lot of teams, right? Because they've struggled with that. They've struggled with injuries, and they haven't been able to find somebody since Matt Ryan. So Cousins in the spring chicken. He's coming off a serious injury. Penix Jr. is a guy that has a ton of upside. You also don't have to play him right away, which I think is great. And I think that that's good for some of these young quarterbacks. Like J.J. McCarthy maybe sitting behind Sam Darnold for a couple of games. Not a bad thing. We don't have to throw these guys out there to the wolves, get their confidence completely shattered. It's all right to sit and learn. Pat Mahomes did that, right? And I'm not saying any of these guys are Pat Mahomes, but that's just one example. Aaron Rodgers, look at the success Jordan Love is having right now with Green Bay. There is some benefit to sitting, learning how to study film at the NFL level, really have a grasp of the playbook, seeing what it's like to be a pro. Penix Jr. is going to get that. And I do think, hey, a year, 2 years from now, when Kirk Cousins is gone, because I don't think he's going to fill out that entire contract, and he's their starting quarterback, nobody's going to care that they took him 8th overall over Laitu Latu,
Penix Jr. was my QB2. And I'm not saying I belong on the draft show, but he was one of my guys that I had rated a lot higher than a lot did.
I like that, Mike. Yeah, I could see it. I really, really can. I could see Michael Penix Jr. surprising a lot of people.
Zach, you mentioned upside, and when you look at the Falcons' approach in the draft, especially the last 4 years with their first-round picks, they've targeted a lot of guys with upside. When you're picking inside the top 10, is that the best strategy, you think?
I'm always going to try and build my line. I'm going to take a defensive or offensive lineman. You win in the trenches in this league. So, we all get mesmerized by the skill guys. Like, I love Jeff Kavanaugh to death, but Jeff will take a receiver every first round, every year. He's always going to pine for the receivers. To me, I do believe, what good is having a receiver if I can't block and give my quarterback time to get the football to said receiver, right? How good is my running back unless he's Barry Sanders, which I know my buddy Brian Broaddus said Bijan reminded him a little bit about Barry Sanders. But if I can't block in front of him and try and at least open up something, right? There are backs that make them elite, that make something out of nothing. But big picture, for the most part, they're only going to be as successful as the offensive line is. So if I've got a premium pick, give me a quarterback, give me a left tackle, give me an edge rusher, maybe a corner now in the way the NFL is going. They've gone receiver, tight end, running back. I think a lot of people would argue the running back and the tight end, that's a luxury pick in the top 10. But, hey, Bijan, I think, is going to have a much better year. He's a rare type of talent. I'm not against taking that dude in the top 10, but he's one of very, very few that you could make a legit argument that is worthy of a pick like that. Majority of the time, I'm taking line of scrimmage, offensive or defensive line.
Are you buying the hype for Atlanta this year? And do you think their success is more key on Cousins or their coaching staff?
I think it's more keyed on Cousins. I really do. And I like Raheem Morris, and I think he's put together a good staff there. So I think that their coaching staff is going to be successful. But how the quarterback play is what kept them out of the postseason last year. If they get slightly above average quarterback play, I think that they win that division. And then we'll see what happens in the postseason.
Yeah, you mentioned Kirk Cousins there, Zach. Are the Falcons a good enough team to win a Super Bowl with Kirk Cousins leading them?
No. But it's that's more thing on Kirk Cousins. Like, I know people want to crap on Dak. Kirk Cousins is not a guy that's going to lead you to a Super Bowl. I just don't see that. You need a Philadelphia type of roster that they had 2 years ago with Jalen Hurts, where legitimately they go completely healthy. There's no holes. And I think Atlanta's got a pretty good roster, but I don't think that it's good enough under a Kirk Cousins. When you've got a guy whose record outside of noon games is below 500, there's an issue there. And I think Cousins is a good quarterback. He's just not the kind of guy, in my opinion, especially at this age, that you're going to see him take an Atlanta Falcon team to a Super Bowl. They can make the playoffs. They can maybe win a playoff game. But I think that's about the max success you're going to get in Atlanta.
Bijan, Drake, and Pitts, or Lamb, Fergie, and Dowdle?
Oh, God. I love
it's because the running back. That's what makes it tough.
Yeah,
they all hate running backs.
It is. If you had Pollard, then it's the Cowboys trio.
Jeez.
But I think there's such a gap between Bijan and Rico. I think there's a gap between the others. I do. I think Lamb is better than Drake London, although I think Drake London can do a little bit with a solid quarterback to go ahead and cut that a little bit. But CeeDee's definitely better. And then Kyle Pitts and Jake Ferguson, I think Fergie's better than Kyle Pitts. Again, you don't take a tight end in the top 10. You just don't do it. It's just to me, it's just never worked. And that's why Brock Bowers might have been saved, because he ends up going 13. He didn't end up going in the top 10. There's bad juju that goes into taking a guy in the top 10 of the tight end spot. But I think because of the gap at running back there, it makes me absolutely sick. I hate this, but I might have to go with no, bleep it. I'm taking CD and Fergie. I can't.
Nobody cares about the running back.
Yeah, it's fine.
Hey, our guy Brenden Smith had to join us, man. Brenden, I hope you're having a good vacation, brother. You're missing out on a great episode, sir.
He's mad. I know he's mad. I'm going to check my phone. He's going to be mad.
Where do you rank the Falcons' skill position players among the NFL, that their core together?
That's a good question. I think they're a top 10 core. I think Bijan's got the possibility to be a top 3 running back this year. Drake London could be a top 10 to 15 receiver. And then Kyle Pitts. Look, there's not a ton of great tight ends. So Kyle Pitts can be a top 10 type of tight end. So, if you've got guys that are all borderline, Drake London's probably got the bigger gap because we're in such a golden age of receiver. There's so many good receivers. London's got to jump a lot of guys to get into the top 10 conversation. But, I think that their trio, ultimately, yes, I would rank them ahead of the Cowboys in my rankings just because of they've got Bijan. The Cowboys don't really have – they got Zeke, And I love Zeke, and he's had a great career, but Zeke's at the end of that career. So they're up there. In terms of if you get a good quarterback, you're going to see just how good those 3 are. And I think they are very, very talented skill players. So I think they're in the conversation. I'd probably still lean the Lions, who we talked about, have a better trio with St. Brown, Laporta. They're 2 running backs. I would lean with Jahmyr Gibbs. I'd still take San Francisco and their skill players above them. Miami, I think, has some really good skill talent as well. Yeah. I could probably name off at least 5 teams I'd put ahead of Atlanta, but I think they're in the top 10. They'd be somewhere between 6 and 10, I think, on most people's rankings.
Before we pick this last game, the last question, because People that watch the show know I've been betting since I was like 11 years old. So a lot of times I see things this way. So Dallas has to play the San Francisco 49ers, get beat up, and then they go from San Francisco all the way to Atlanta and got to travel. Yeah. How much does that impact when you're picking a game like this where we would look and go, Dallas should beat Atlanta, but then there's factors like that, and we remember this ain't Madden. These are humans.
Yeah. No, 100%. It is. That's a tough deal afterwards. And I know there was, I believe, a stat last year after the Cowboys lost to San Francisco. I went back and looked, and teams have had trouble, the week after the 49ers games. A lot of them, I think only like 3 had won afterwards. So one of which I think was the Cowboys, actually. They won the week after the San Francisco game. So that's going to be a tough ask, but I just think it's one of those things where the Cowboys are going to know, especially they'll be in desperation mode if they do drop some of these games that we're saying, like Pittsburgh, that's a close one, the season opener against Cleveland, like it's going to be put up or shut up time. And I think that's going to be a desperate team theory. Cowboys are going to need to get that win. They're used to playing wonky schedules, man. I mean, it's the Cowboys. They'll play on a Monday night. Now we got a Sunday night game. Here's a Thursday night game. Here's noon on Sunday. Now you're back to 3:25 the next Sunday. Like they're used to wonky stuff. I think they're kind of prepared for that, but that is difficult playing against a physical San Francisco team. And now you're flying the other side of the country to take on Atlanta. They're not going to use that as an excuse, but looking at stuff like that, Mike, you're right. I mean, that's how you can schedule some of these upsets that way. Like when you see a team like, oh, did Kansas City just lose to the Jets? Like, what the hell just happened here? Those penciled in, like, bizarre upsets that people forget about at the end of the season, but you look back on it and you're like, yeah, actually they did. So when we're crapping on the Cowboys for beating the brakes off of Washington and the Giants, like, you still got to win in the NFL, right? Teams will lay a stinker now and then. So, yeah, just go ahead and be thankful that you got those victories, because the Cowboys oftentimes, they're winning the games they should win. It's the games that, okay, this is going to be close, that they haven't been able to consistently win.
And no team will ever go into a Cowboys game going, oh, break every team. Everyone's watching. All eyes are on us. Play your hardest. Every player plays their hardest. So
yeah, no doubt.
It's a pain in the butt.
Yeah, you mentioned Bijan Robinson and his ability. How do you feel about this matchup, Zach?
I think ultimately, Mike Zimmer will schematically be able to have this team better when it comes to stopping the run. I think that's been a calling card of his from when he was with the Cowboys, then to Cincinnati, and then you look at what his defenses did in Minnesota. So I do expect an upgrade there. Trayvon Diggs, if he's healthy, I think he can lock up a Drake London. I'm fascinated by the matchup of, all right, who then takes Kyle Pitts? Is it, Malik Hooker? Is it Owanye Thomas? Are you kicking Deron Bland inside and saying, you know what, Bland, let's go ahead and rock you covering Kyle Pitts? Is it Eric Kendricks, who is a better cover linebacker? So, to me, I think that they offensively, if you can block up front and you can hold up protection, I don't think Atlanta has anybody that can guard Jake Ferguson. I think Fergie would feast in this football game. And CD has proven he's a guy that it doesn't matter who's guarding him. CDs can go get his. So I think that ultimately I like the matchup. I think it favors the Cowboys, unless maybe I'm totally wrong and they still prove they can't stop the run to save their life. Then we're in for a world of hurt.
Who you got winning?
I'll take the Cowboys to win this one.
So will I. All that talk, all that gambling, betting stuff about the schedule and moving, you still got to beat Atlanta.
Hey, maybe Atlanta covers. That could happen, but I think the Cowboys find a way to get that done.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, coming off a major victory, momentum is on their side, and Dallas wins back-to-back games, so I have Dallas winning this one as well. Here, let's do a record recap. After this victory over the Falcons, Zach, you had the Cowboys going 2-2 during the stretch. Mike, you also had the Cowboys going 2-2 during the stretch. I had Dallas going 3-1. Zach, looking at the schedule, is this stretch the hardest part of the schedule?
Yeah, this is. I mean, the middle of it with all the road games, I think this is absolutely a challenging portion of the schedule. There's no doubt. You've got San Francisco. You've got Detroit. You've got a physical game on the road against Pittsburgh. So, yes, I would lean towards it probably is. And, hey, the one thing the scheduled gods helped you with here is you're going to Cleveland and you're going to Pittsburgh early in the season. So you're dodging the bad weather games, which we've seen cause the Cowboys a lot of problems. But, yeah, I think down the stretch, after this, you're looking at, hey, you get the Eagles at home and then the Bengals. But otherwise, this is definitely, in my opinion, the toughest stretch of games where it's like, ooh, they could go 1-3. I don't know that we're going to be shocked.
Yeah. Oh, which game do you have circled on your Cowboys calendar? I know you mentioned Pittsburgh.
Between who? Sorry?
On your Cowboys schedule, which game do you have circled? I know you mentioned Pittsburgh earlier. Is that the game?
Pittsburgh's going to be fun because I think that's the game that I'm going to attend.
Yeah.
The one that I've got circled is always that Dirty Bird game, man. It's November 10th at home against the Eagles. Like, you got to take care of business. It sucks. Like, in December, you've got to go back to Philly. But they need to make sure you keep and hold serve at home against Filthy, man. And again, the division's probably going to come down to the Cowboys and the Eagles. I do think Washington, if Jaden Daniels is good, and I think Jaden Daniels is going to be good, is going to surprise some people and be competitive. But I don't think they're quite ready to take that leap yet. I think they could be a 7-8 win football team this year and kind of be in the hunt graphic for the majority of the season. But you've got to make sure you get that home game against the Eagles, man. That's always the game that I'm looking at. And it's weird because they're not playing Sunday Night Football against them. And then after that, I'm interested in Monday Night Football, Houston. That's going to be a juicy game. Is Houston able to live up to the expectations, the in-state rivalry? C.J. Stroud and Micah have been hanging out a lot this offseason. The Diggs brothers, do we finally get that matchup with Stephon and Trayvon? I think the Houston game is one that's going to be a lot of fun.
Absolutely.
So I don't know if you can give a Super Bowl prediction. If you can't, that's no problem. I know sometimes you have to save that for your show. But do you think Dallas is a playoff team? And then if you can give a prediction, what would be your two teams?
Yeah, I think the Cowboys are a playoff team. I think that I'm going to stick with a wild card team because it's just weird in the NFC East. I mean, we're looking at 20 years without repeat champions, and I'm nervous about this Cowboys team. There's a lot of question marks right now. So I think they do get in. I think they're a wild card team. As of today, I'm going to surprise a lot of people. I'm taking Joe Burrow and the Bengals. I think they get healthy.
Love it.
I think they make it in the AFC. I think this is the year that Joe Burrow wins the Lombardi Trophy and the Cincinnati Bengals win the Super Bowl, and they'll do so by beating Jordan Love and the Green Bay Packers.
Oh, man, the Packers, huh?
That's nice. I like that. I think Dallas wins the division. This is my bold prediction because McCarthy, Dak have done they won a road game. They won 3 straight 12-win games. So I think this is the year that they win the division back-to-back for the first time, and he gets fired.
Oh, my gosh.
After doing all that stuff, still not going to be enough.
Oh, that would make Mike McCarthy sick. That's for sure.
Yeah. Zach, while we're wrapping things up, do you have a bold prediction for the 2024 NFL season?
Jake Ferguson leads all tight ends in catches and receiving yards.
You hear that, Brenden? You hear that?
Mad. Yeah, that's Brendan's number. He follows Brenden on Twitter, and we hear about it basically every show. So
Fergie's that man.
He's excited.
Yes, man, Zach, this was amazing. And thank you so much for your time, brother. It was really a pleasure, man. Thank you so much.
Hey, I appreciate you guys. Keep up the great work. Love the content, and hopefully I can come back on in the future, man. Always a pleasure talking with you guys.
Remind the people they can find you on X, Zach.
When you can basically go, hey, I want to come on this week, and I will make sure we have room for you to come on.
Hey, I appreciate you, Mike. Thank you, guys.
Love your work, my friend.
Love you, boys.
Love your work.
Mike, where can we find you on X? Guys, I'm Paul Ryan. You can find me on X at Paul_Ryan15. We appreciate you joining us, and we will see you guys next week.
My stuff's all Dallas. I have